Welcome to Empowering Homeschool Conversations, your authority in navigating the world of homeschooling diverse learners. Featuring Peggy Ployhar from SPED Homeschool, Annie Yorty from AnnieYorty.com, Leilani Melendez from Living with Eve, Stephanie Buckwalter from eLARP Learning, and Dawn Jackson from Dawn Jackson Educational Consulting and Tutoring. With over 75 years of combined homeschooling expertise, experiences, and perspectives, this group is eager to share their wealth of wisdom to empower your homeschooling journey. So grab your favorite mug, settle in, and get ready for insightful discussions, valuable insights, and practical tips. Give your homeschool the power boost it needs to successfully educate the unique learners in your home.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Empowering Homeschool Conversations, where we dive deep into real homeschooling topics to encourage and equip you on your journey, especially if you're teaching a unique learner. I'm Peggy Ployhar, the founder and CEO of SPED Homeschool, and I'm thrilled that you're here today. Our topic today is one that is especially relevant in our tech-driven world, how online learning is changing homeschooling for unique learners. And to help us explore that, we're joined by Amir Nathoo, the CEO of Outschool, one of the largest online platforms offering live interest-based classes for kids around the world. Whether you're wondering how to keep your learner engaged, looking for flexible options that align with your child's strengths and interests, or just trying to navigate this ever-evolving educational landscape, this conversation is for you. Before we dive in, I just want to remind you to check out Homeschool Heroes at spedhomeschool.com for more resources, curriculum deals, and community support, especially for those of you homeschooling children with learning challenges. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode of Empowering Homeschool Conversations. Welcome, Amir. Glad to have you here today.
Glad to be here. Really looking forward to the conversation. Thanks for having me.
Yes, me too. And learning more about what you do. That's I always loved to get to know our guests. And I'd love to start out with just a question about that, just to have our listeners get to know a little bit more about the story behind Outschool and how it started and what inspired its mission to create a love of learning through interest-driven online classes.
Yeah, happy to go into that. And so Outschool is an online learning platform, and we think of it as a marketplace. So teachers are free to teach the classes that they've always wanted to teach. And they offer tens of thousands of topics, and we've served over 1 million learners. And teachers create classes from everything from core subjects taught in a traditional way, all the way through to crossover, things like learning math through Minecraft, to career-based classes, or pure enrichment. We like to think that we have something for everyone. And that's key because every kid is different and their needs change with time. Every kid. Unfortunately, our current structure in the school system isn't really geared up to take that into account. But now, with modern technology and learning methods, we can actually coordinate groups of kids to come together around interests to foster their love of learning. And that's what we try to do.
That's awesome, because sometimes kids feel so alone because they have this peculiar interest and it may only, interest a few kids, within their state or whatever. And to know that they're not by themselves, that there are other kids out there that have these interests and want to learn more. They don't feel so odd and so strange. And it doesn't seem like and so for parents too, having homeschooled my own kids for 19 years, I know sometimes it's like, I don't know if I should count this as a subject or not, but they're sure into this. So totally. Let's just keep going.
And it's not just about interests, right? Because even for traditional subjects, like math, say, people learn math in different ways, at different paces.
Yes.
They learn it with different styles. They resonate with different people, whether it's peers in the class or a teacher. And so much can be gained and so much can also be destroyed if it's the right group or the wrong group and the right fit. And you don't necessarily have access to that right fit locally or within your traditional school, or maybe you do mostly, but not for every single subject or every single circumstance. And that's why I think in education it's really important that we provide flexibility and variety and empower families to make choices that are best for their own unique learner. And that's why, I hope that what we do, you could see the resonance with, your audience who are focused on alternative education and specifically for, unique learners.
Right.
And so, very excited to be talking to you today.
Yeah, absolutely. So how would you define self-directed learning? And why do you think that resonates so deeply with students who don't fit into that traditional educational mold you were talking about?
Well, I think, and I heard a friend, Aaron Eden, say this, and I regard him as a mentor and expert on self-directed learning. And the way he puts it is that really only two types of education. There's lots of different philosophies, but really they fall into two buckets: self-directed or other-directed. And which one it is depends on who really is in control. Is it the parent who's in control, the teacher who's in control, or is it the learner who's in control? And our traditional structures are very much other-directed education, and they try and provide other-directed containers and maybe some self-directed parts in it. For example, that's Montessori. You have to complete a certain set of exercises or certain types of content, but how you go about it and in what time frame and what age, there's flexibility there. So
right,
that's a mixed model, but the container is still other-directed. At the far end of the spectrum, you have pure unschooling, where it's entirely self-directed. And most people want some kind of a balance. And I think that's fair. And probably as you go from younger kids to older kids, you probably need a little bit more other-directed at first, and then stepping back. And there's a big step back between traditional K-12 education and college education. It's still fairly other-directed, even at a college level. But I think a lot of what inspires people to take alternative paths is to move in the direction of self-directed education sooner in a child's development. And why does this particularly appeal to kids with unique abilities? I mean, the problem is that our structures for other-directed education always have to play to the average.
Right, exactly.
Depending on the class size. And the more unique or different your child is, the less other-directed education is going to work for them. And they will likely also, and maybe psychologists can tell us why, but it also seems to be the case that these kids also seem to gravitate towards self-direction and really value autonomy to a far greater degree of other kids. And who knows what the cause and effect of that is, but that's my observation, having worked in this community for a while.
Yeah, I completely agree. And it was the same with all three of my children, that's how they would push against me if I tried to control their learning too much, and because also, they did desire that. And it's great to now see them as adults, because they definitely will just go out and learn whatever they need and just make it work.
And what a fantastic kind of skill that they have developed through this. They can learn what they need, because the other part of it is I've talked from the point of view of what works for certain kids. But if you think from a society perspective about what's needed for the future and where our world is going and where the economy is, like, don't we need citizens who can think for themselves? Don't we need entrepreneurs and creative people who can carve out niches in a world of AI? This seems exactly where the world is headed. So yes, there's lots of arguments to say that for many kids, this is the right approach for their health and well-being and to thrive in education, but it's also what society needs.
Yes, and I've said the same thing many times as well, and I completely agree with that, because I've seen my kids kind of fall into that, and I'm an entrepreneur myself, and so they probably got a lot of that from me. But which is not the easiest for raising kids, but man, when you see them launch, it's like, oh yes, you get this, and you realize you don't have to march to the beat of the drummer that everybody else is marching to. You got your own, and that's just fine.
And it's very American. As an immigrant coming from England myself, to me, this reflects what is great about America and the values that we share. And, we can talk about freedom in many contexts, but to me, freedom in education means self-direction.
Yeah, I completely agree. And more parents are realizing that. So Outschool's recent research found that 78% of parents believe that traditional education systems need to be reimagined. From your perspective, what are the biggest ways our current model is falling short?
Yes, it was a dramatic statistic from our recent survey, but honestly, not a surprise to me, given the trends.
Yeah.
There's a Gallup poll showing trust in public education, traditional education, falling for over 30 years. This is a trend that's been continuous, but it's still a remarkable finding. A lot has been said about the problems with traditional education. But what I don't think the core problem is the intentions and motivations of teachers and administrators. They're doing heroics within the context of a broken system.
Yes.
And if you talk to many of them about these ideas, they'll agree. It's not, there's not actually a massive philosophical difference here. The issue is how to deliver it at scale. And our school system was designed with the technology of its time. A few hundred years ago was when the basic structure was conceived of. And at the time, how were you going to teach kids when you have a natural economic issue with the student-teacher ratio, and you needed to provide in that industrial era kind of a standardized set of base knowledge? That was the priority. How could we create folks who could understand how to operate this new industrial economy? And our whole system was designed like that. But now we have technology that should enable us to do far more dynamic matching of kids with each other and a teacher, whether online or in person. And we're only just at the start of actually applying this ways of organizing that actually use the latest technology. And one challenge that you have, though, in accelerating that transformation is first practical. I mean, you're talking about 50 million kids in the United States and a system that exists. And so to transition that system wholesale to a new model is going to be hard. It's going to take years. And that's just practical problems. And many people are focused on it, including Outschool and myself. Secondly, you've got political and emotive problems. The emotive problem is a tough one, right? Kids are so important to us all, to parents, to society. And that can make folks risk averse and say, "Oh, we don't want to mess this up."
Really don't try it on my kids.
Right.
Try it on the next kid.
and that's why I think technology has transformed so many other industries faster. There's this horrible irony that our most important activities end up being stuck in the past because of this risk aversion. And then secondly, there's political problems around this. When there is fast change and acceleration, as we're seeing in our world today, some groups of people grasp to the past and say, "Oh, you know what the problem with today's world is? The problem is that we've lost what we had in the 50s or the late 19th century. We need to get back to that. We need to get back to basics. Why aren't kids learning algebra at the right time?" Whereas I'm thinking, why aren't they learning complex calculus and analysis and college grade math at 12? There's no reason they can't. But some people grasp the past, and that leads to a reactionary tendency, which is unhealthy and ultimately self-defeating. And additionally, some folks do see the future and are working towards it, and that's what I see in the school choice movement and the ESA movement. But whenever you're building the future, it can become politicized. And right now, for various tactical political reasons, it's primarily red states that are embracing school choice wholesale. But if you look at the underlying data, and our survey also showed this, if you ask parents and then segment about school choice and about public funding to school choice, and you segment the results by their political leanings and demographics, you find that there is broad support for school choice across demographics and across political lines. So the difference that you see with some parties or some states adopting policies faster than others is pure tactical politics. It does not reflect the underlying demand from families, which is broad. The demand becomes even greater the younger you look. So Gen Z parents are even more likely to support school choice. 81% looked as a whole, 83% amongst Gen Z parents. And so that's why this is where the future is going. And you can kind of abstract away politics and say, this is going to be the future. And yeah, politics aside.
Right. I know, because every parent's going to make a choice for their child. And it's interesting. Some of the data that I'm seeing too, since the pandemic, was that more than ever. So I homeschooled even before the pandemic. And, but that, at that point, before that, parents would choose to homeschool their entire family. All the kids would be home, majority, unless the child had a special need, was in special education, then they'd leave that one child in school and then bring the rest home. And it may be a slow migration, but now we're seeing parents make a choice where one child's in a private school, one child's going to public school, one's doing an online school. And, and so they're making individual choices for their children based on their needs. And so it's a whole new kind of demographics of even homeschoolers than we've seen before. What did the pandemic reveal about, parents and their learning styles that may have caused this transformation that from your perspective?
And we see exactly the same things, that observation, that the boundaries are becoming less clear. People aren't a homeschooling family. There were some kids doing, even what is homeschooling? Because, if it's like a co-op that meets 4 days a week, isn't it really a microschool? And the
right, exactly.
And a microschool is whether it's parent-led or teacher-led, and people are mixing and matching these different models per child, which I think is exactly what needs to happen. And we just need to make that process simpler and easier. But why? Why is that happening? And what did the pandemic play a role in it? Well, the pandemic, because of the mass school closures, did two things. Parents came face to face with what their kids were actually doing in the school, and there was a big moment. That's one of the emotive difficulties of transformation education. Is parents mostly end up with a rose-tinted view of their own education and forget what it's like to be a child.
You gotta feel good about it because you're investing your child's future in it.
It's almost like the more successful you are as well, it's like, well, it worked for me, why wouldn't it work for my kids? The irony is that people in a position of power to affect change tend to be the most regressive when it comes to education. But this forced parents to confront up close what their kids were actually doing, and many will realize, they weren't happy. And it also forced many parents, particularly parents with means, who had the option to try different things, to explore alternatives. And so there was a significant mass realization that both that traditional school wasn't what people thought it was, and that alternatives had value. And, it's like Pandora's box. You can't, once you know, and, behavior naturally is slower to change. Decisions for your kids, it's kind of a long cycle. But you can start to see that now. And so there's new cohorts of families adopting alternative education in various forms, including homeschooling, who are coming in because of the pandemic influence. And so it's a much broader range of reasons that families are engaging in alternative education. So the face of it is changing. And I expect it to continue to change, and over time look more and more like just the demographics of the United States. And we at Outschool believe alt-ed, alternative education, is in fact all ed of the future. So this new ecosystem and new set of practices is ultimately going to take over the whole of the education system. Doesn't mean public school is going to go away. It's just that they're going to transform too. And they're going to unbundle, they're going to start offering more flexibility, and you can see that happening as well.
Just as the demand increases, that it is going to force them to change whether or not they're ready for it.
Yes. Yep, 100%.
Yeah, it's going to come from the school boards or the parents to the school boards to, and on down trickling. So, but yeah, if that's the way it takes it, then that's just the way it's going to happen. So, yeah. So Outschool offers a wide range of classes for neurodiverse learners. What are some of the most popular or impactful classes you've seen families using in the homeschool space?
We have so many classes. It's hard to pick favorites. So I'll just give you some anecdotes.
Okay.
We have like a financial trading class where you can mock trade stocks. That's one of our most popular classes across all learners. But of course, neurodiverse learners who are advanced in math and are impatient to exercise the talents in the real world, love this class. And then we've had other classes, like, for example, we had a poetry class, which was for learners who had difficulty verbalizing their ideas. So it's communicated almost entirely through like the Zoom chats and asynchronously. And through this mode, learners who would otherwise struggle to express themselves in a normal classroom environment were able to flourish. And so we also have specific classes that are designed and tutoring designed for particular learning needs, such as autism and ADHD. But many of our classes are general classes that just have sensitive teachers who are aware of these differences, and that can make all the difference for your learner. And we've noticed that our audience on Outschool skews neurodiverse compared with the general audience, and it's no surprise because when you offer a choice, then families with neurodiverse learners can find the class, experiment, and find what works. And so it's natural that we would end up with an audience that skews in that direction. That in turn means we have a teacher base that is experienced working with neurodiverse learners and a team at Outschool that's experienced at serving neurodiverse learners, whether or not it's diagnosed. We don't draw a clear line on that because every kid is different. And by serving, neurodiverse learners, we improve our level of service for every learner out there.
Absolutely. Yes. Because every child has some sort of struggle. And so yes, it's best to go from that point. So with 53% of homeschool parents saying they're very satisfied with their child's education, how do you think online learning contributes to that satisfaction from the parent's point of view?
Well, I think the most important thing is that the parent is seeing their child flourish. And so insofar as online learning can help their child flourish in certain subjects, that's how it supports that satisfaction. And the ways that online learning can support that satisfaction is by providing services that might not be available locally. For example, certain enrichment activities might be available in certain areas or might be at a too high price point. So, for example, piano tutoring, we can do that online now. It works. My child is in a piano.
Oh, that's amazing.
But, certain musical instruments or certain enrichment isn't always available locally. Especially if your child is in a co-op or a microschool, which might cover core subjects, but then doesn't have the wide range of opportunities that a larger school would have. And then secondly, the ability to connect kids with kids like them and a teacher who they resonate with. So even if you do have the services locally, it still might not be a fit. And so it's providing that option that wasn't available before based on what families have access to locally.
Absolutely. Yes. Things have changed dramatically. And I just remember during the pandemic time interviewing people that were leaving the school system, the teachers, they're left and right and going, I'm starting this business and I'm starting this business. And now to just see how you can connect with just an expert so quickly for your child that just wasn't even available. And I do believe that had that not happened, that we wouldn't see that satisfaction rate and parents would be burned out more because they would have to be doing the majority of the teaching, which is how we did it before. And it was possible, but man, it was hard. And now, the more online classes you can choose from, I found my kids, we even gravitated that after the pandemic. They're like, can I take this class online or from somebody who's actually, excited about this topic, not you? Yes, please.
That's funny.
So, yeah. So parents also often cite bullying, mental health as major concerns for traditional school settings. How does Outschool help alleviate some of those issues for homeschoolers?
Well, it's hard to be bullied in a monitored online class environment.
I agree with that. Yeah.
It's hard to have any sense of physical risk.
Yeah.
You can turn off the screen. You can turn off the screen. You can exit at any time. And it's that also forces our teachers to be engaged.
It gives them that control.
The kids have that control. And it forces our teachers to be engaging, because if the kid has the option to tune out and run a successful class. So our teachers have become much more experienced at holding kids' attention, focusing on their engagements, because they don't have a captive audience, like literally captive, like you having a physical classroom. And providing that autonomy, I don't know if scientific studies have been done on this, but it's intuitive to me that providing kids with autonomy and choice would improve their mental health, and being able to connect them with kids like them would improve that. And that is one thing that I'd love to see in the coming years in the alternative education homeschooling space is greater focus from academics actually studying this, because so much of the research is studied within the context of the traditional system. And I think there's enough evidence from the perspective of usage and parent satisfaction with these Gene models that it justifies significant investment in scientific research to study these connections, because there is a mental health crisis in this country. There are many drivers to that. I believe some of it's bad use of technology. Some of it is our traditional structures and schools which are failing. And we need to create new models if we hope to address this. And that satisfaction number from homeschool families is very, very promising and is worth investing in.
Absolutely. Yes, I'd love to see more research on those things too. I'll have to reach out to some people that I know that are interested in doing homeschool research. That's some good topics.
Well, but a note of hope for that. When I started the Outschool 10 years ago, there was really very little mainstream attention and academic attention on it. Now there is a conference every year at the Harvard Kennedy School called Emerging School Models. And for the last few years, under the banner of Harvard, there are now academics getting together with practitioners and businesses that are focused on alternative education. That hasn't existed before.
That's great.
It just shows the growing recognition that something really interesting is happening here and something worth investing in.
Yeah, absolutely. I know I spoke at a education conference in Las Vegas in 2021, and I remember sharing just the difference of what it's like to home educate and kind of that differentiation model of, being able to do something different with each child. And I just remember so many academics coming up to me afterwards and going, that's what we want to do. But we can't. And it's like you've reached the ideal in your home, and we can't duplicate that where we're at. But I think through technology, we're finding there's ways that we can. But it is slow, like you've been talking about. And but I'm just glad there's progress being made. So, so research shows that like 86% of parents want more choice and involvement in their child's education. How is Outschool helping families take the lead in a child's learning journey? I know for each kid, maybe they know what they want to know, or parents kind of know, but how does that, like when they take one class, how does that start them on this path now of going, maybe we need more of this?
Totally. Well, it starts even before the class happens, because many families say that the parent will kind of browse our sites and will make a list and then collaborate with their learner over what to take, or sit there and look at it all together. And in the best cases, the kids just start asking for classes. Like my son, who's 6, has got so used to just Outschool existing that he comes up to me and says, can I have a class on computers? Can I have a class on German? And he just assumes that he's got this baseline assumption that I can just get him a learning opportunity or whatever he asks for, which if you think about it, it's an incredible belief that he has at such a young age. It wouldn't be possible if, he didn't feel involved in his education or wasn't aware of the resources available. So it starts even before the class, and just a conversation with the parent about what the kid wants to learn and how they want to learn it. And then once the class happens, the way that parents can engage is, we record the class videos for review afterwards, and so the parent has access to that, so they can see what happened in class.
That's great.
Now, of course, like many parents do not have time to watch the entire class videos. So we encourage teachers to provide feedback after each session and provide them with AI-powered tools to turn like some summary bullet points into a mini report for the parent.
Yeah.
And so we try and build in features like that to give parent visibility into what the learner is, how the learner is engaging in the class, and as a result, start a conversation about what else they might like to learn, what they enjoyed. And our goal is to have kids asking their parents for more, whether it's Outschool classes or more of whatever they've learned in whatever format.
Right.
And I think that's what our goal should be in education, to get to the point where kids love learning and associated with it with both fun and progress in a way that they want more.
Yeah, that's how you build those lifelong learners, and they realize that learning is fun and that there's a reward out of it that isn't, it's not like they get a sticker or, an ice cream cone. They actually internally are satisfied and want more. That is truly what we're aiming for in education anyways. So that's a real powerful way to do that. So ESAs and school choice are changing the education landscape. I know there's some in the homeschool community, and I won't name names, that are very against those. A lot of the homeschool organizations are just kind of fight against it. Some don't. But how might these vehicles improve access to platforms like Outschool for families who couldn't previously afford these kinds of resources?
So, Outschool is very much in support of ESAs and public funding and alternative education, while recognizing it's not for everyone. And so, we support families who are coming to us and paying out of pocket or using other sources of funding. And we support families who are coming to us using ESAs. And what we see across both is the motivations are very similar, wanting to get the best possible education for their child and customizing it. The thing about ESAs and other forms of public funding for school choice is they open up access to folks who might otherwise be restricted by budget. And that's important, especially when you think about giving kids access to live classes, to environments where they can talk with other kids and with a teacher. Because often, curriculum can be inexpensive. It can even be free if you're using resources like Khan Academy. So it's absolutely possible to do homeschooling. On a limited budget, and many folks do. But by providing additional funding, you open it up to folks who maybe can't stay home to help their kids, or who don't have the confidence or don't feel that they can do it all themselves and need to use resources like Outschool. And we believe that is overall very positive for homeschooling as a whole, because the broader and larger the community of folks engaging with homeschooling or alternative education, the better we believe the ecosystem can become, because of the increased awareness, resources, and political support that will result. And I know that's maybe a different perspective than some longer-standing homeschooling organizations, but I believe it's the future. And
yeah, I do too. Yeah.
I don't think, I know the fear is that, with public funding, there come strings attached potentially. And that is a concern. And, some ESAs we're seeing really be very open and universal, which we support. Some are more restricted in often well-intentioned but unhelpful ways. And so we absolutely will have to try and push for a version of public funding in alternative education, which is more open, more trusting, while having safeguards that ensure that policymakers and the people to whom they're accountable, who are funding this, taxpayers, are satisfied with the results, and there's a balance there. And you can't have everything, and there's going to be a necessity for compromise. But then it's also the case you don't need to use these public funds to homeschool. So ultimately, there's a choice at that level. So that's why we think that this trend toward public funding in homeschooling and school choice is very positive for the ecosystem, and the potential downsides can be mitigated.
Yeah. Are you able, as far as parents that you know coming in, using ESAs for like special needs ones especially? So I know that there's some states that have them specifically allocated. Are parents able to use those for like courses like Outschool, or is it more just for therapies? I know our community is going to want to know that answer.
Yeah, we can't provide therapies that are medical in nature that can be claimed on medical insurance.
Right.
The nature of what we can provide is outside of that, but we can provide educational resources that are particularly focused on various kinds of neurodiversities and affinity groups. And so we have those. And for those educational resources that are sensitive to neurodiversity and differences, then we absolutely do have many families using ESA funds and other forms of public assistance. The rules on what you can use them for vary significantly by the program and by the state. So if you're in any doubt about whether you can use certain funds on Outschool classes, just email in to our support team, and they'll be happy to help you determine that. We have integrations with various programs, such as, for example, with the Arizona Universal ESA, you can just use your funds and not pay anything out of pocket. For some programs, there's a debit card, which obviously you can use to pay on the Outschool website, just checking out as a parent, it's the same way as a parent paying out of pocket would do. And in other programs, unfortunately, still require you to pay first and then submit to reimbursement. So the processes are varied, and I think we should be pushing for more standardization over time of the payment processes and some of these regulations, because yes, I believe in choice.
Yeah, I'm sure that it's really hard on your end.
So it's hard for everyone, right? So, but this is why I don't think the idea of standardization is bad when it comes to the logistics, the payments, and how these programs and the rules around these programs. Because what we don't want to end up with is inefficiency and waste. But what we want is vast variety in terms of the choices that families can make, while making the process of making those choices as easy as possible.
Absolutely. Yes, that makes a lot of sense. And I think parents would, especially those that move from state to state, if they're in the military or just for other reasons. I know it's such a big, monumental thing to learn all the new homeschooling laws and all the things, hoops you have to jump through. So yes, I completely agree that standardization is definitely would be much appreciated. So your survey also highlighted that math readiness is a lingering concern post-pandemic. How does Outschool approach skill building in academic core areas like math while still keeping learning engaging?
So we have core courses in math, and we have math tutoring, and plenty of kids love math, and we serve them. Plenty of kids love math, but not the way it's taught in standard form. And we serve them through crossover classes like Learn Math Through Minecraft, or various different types of curriculum and philosophies. And some kids have lost their love of math because of bad experiences in other environments and need encouragement. And again, the enrichment classes we offer can be great paths to re-inspire those kids with math. So we serve the full spectrum. But I'm very proud of the impact we can have with our core courses. And it doesn't take much of an investment. For example, my son goes to a very alternative microschool in San Francisco that's very focused on self-directed education and project-based learning. And they do math and integrate that into their curriculum. But then he also does 30 minutes of one-on-one math tutoring every week. And just with a very small investment of time and money, is multiple grades ahead. And I'm not a tiger parent. I didn't do that because I wanted to multiple grade ahead. He was just interested in maths, got some momentum. So hey, why not pursue that? So it doesn't take much investment, even for these things that are very important in many parents' minds. Small interventions, especially at younger ages, can have a massive impact. And so we encourage families to not think of it as a problem. Don't wait. If you want to make sure that your kid is going to have certain skills, especially if you see them already interested in them, then don't wait for it to become a problem or a concern. Just make a small investment now just to nurture it. And that can avoid bigger problems or bigger concerns down the line.
Yeah, that's great advice, because I think we allow that worry and concern to boil up. But yeah, what would hurt to have one class or one experience to see if all that worry is really necessary, and then if your child may just latch onto something that with alternative education that could show they actually do have an interest and a skill and a talent that you never knew of before. And it could be another person, another method that could bring that out that they maybe just weren't introduced to before. So yeah, it's all of those different things that I think we just think, oh, if it didn't happen the way I had planned it, then there must be a problem. Not always the case. Sometimes you and your kid butt heads because, you just do. So, yeah. So AI in education is a big topic right now. What's your take on its potential for supporting personalized learning versus the risks of overuse or detachment from real human interactions?
Yeah, it's top of mind for many families right now, given the very fast growth in use of AI. But here's the thing. I think AI is going to be extremely problematic for busy work.
Yes.
Anything that smacks of busy work and anything that kids really aren't motivated to do, well, they can just get help from an AI nowadays. So some of the traditional tools of learning, like homework in traditional school environments, aren't going to work anymore unless the kid is actually motivated to learn rather than to cheat, because it's become so much easier. And so busy work is going to be eliminated. And that means that we're going to cut to the core, which is that kids have to be motivated to learn, number one. And if we can't do that, very little else matters. And so alternative education is more robust to problems with AI, because alternative education is all about choice, all about fostering that love of learning and tailoring to the child. So that doesn't mean to say there aren't going to be challenges and problems. But I start from the point of view that alternative education is much more future ready for a world of AI than traditional education. But also, alternative education allows you to have the flexibility to say, well, this is an incredibly powerful tool. Why don't we spend a bunch of time focused on using AI tools and learning together with kids how to use AI tools in a way that you wouldn't be able to fit into a regular school schedule. So I'd say that what we should be doing is spending a lot of time on it because we have the flexibility to do so. Secondly, I think AI tools are going to help with navigation of choice, because right now it's really hard to put together a customized curriculum compared with just making a single choice of sending your kid to a traditional school. And I think there's a whole variety of technologies that can help with that, including our service as a marketplace. But the next generation of our service will be AI empowered. Imagine if you could talk to essentially a personal assistant and have your children talk to them as well. And the personal assistant take in all the requirements, everyone's worries, concerns, interests, desires, and plan a curriculum based on all the options out there. That could take a tremendous load off everyone while making it a lot easier to integrate these various requirements. Because that's the core problem in education. How do you match the parent requirements, what the kid wants, what the expert say is best, what society needs? How do you do that? And I think AI can help with that. And then, of course, there's learning specific subjects. I think probably language learning is the most obvious place where an AI to practice with can have immediate applicability. So I think in select use cases, the dream of like an infinitely patient AI teacher will come to reality. I mean, parents, even if AI is supremely powerful, then we'll be discussing, well, what do we do with our kids? Or do we want them to sit in front of a computer for 18 years? No, we're going to want them to be with other kids. We're going to want them to be with other adults. Maybe what they do with that time will change. But there's going to be enduring value in kids' education of the human connection. And so our focus is going to be on selective use of AI to empower the human-to-human connection.
Yeah, that's a good good point to make, because I think we also, we worry about that balance of screen time and that social emotional needs of our kids, and so that's, parents sometimes are even over concerned about just how much time they spend on the computer, let alone using AI. And so just as a parent yourself, and seeing other families utilize this, how do they balance that between the school learning and then just the connections that you need? As humans, we just need personal relationships and in-person relationships.
Totally. Well, it is a balance. What I don't think prohibition makes sense, because these tools are incredibly powerful tools of our civilization, and we would be doing kids a disservice if we were not giving them early and plenty of exposure to the latest technology. I think the important thing to recognize is not all screen time is created equal. Passively watching an endless stream of addictive videos on YouTube is different from engaging in a live class with other humans, is different even from talking with an AI, is different from being creative in Minecraft. And so the important thing is less the absolute amount of screen time, but how it's being used and the intentionality with it's being used. So I would advocate for strong parent involvement and intentionality as being the guiding principles in how to use technology in kids' education.
Yeah, I completely agree. I kind of leaned on the more tech that my kids had. Just my husband's in IT, and we just have computers everywhere running everything. And so I think I was looked down upon by many homeschoolers years ago, and now my kids are kind of all in that techie field. So I don't feel bad about that at all.
And also think about this, because I said not all screen time is being equal, and I cast aspersions on YouTube. But my son loves Minecraft, and he creates out. I like his time spending on Minecraft. He watches a lot of YouTube videos on how to do things in Minecraft, and then does things in Minecraft. Yeah. And so it can be a learning tool. And then if you think about this, we know from scientific research that hearing a lot of words and adult voices improves literacy. This is why, as parents of young kids, we're encouraged to spend a lot of time talking to them. But there are limits. I'm here at work. I've got to get things done. I can't answer every
sometimes you just don't like to hear yourself talk after a while.
So even just the capability, people are cast aspersions of iPad as a babysitter, but hang on, as long as the content is good and educational, or even just not bad, this is also teaching some literacy. And I think people see the downsides, and it's easy to focus on the downsides without also seeing the upsides. And you need to see both in order to design good use of technology for kids.
I completely agree. That does make a lot of sense too, and it's hard to balance, because I think there's more research done on the negative effects than the positive effects, and for those people, there's some people that it's just a babysitter, and that's all those kids are on, and I'm seeing the repercussions of that in physical form with some kids who come into my studio, and they haven't even gone through all the motor planning that their body has needed over the years. And so they don't even know how to move one side of their body with the other side. And it's crazy, but yet there are those positives as well. And so you just,
And the other thing I'd say, choices I've made for my family when it comes to preschool is outdoor schooling.
Yes,
I worry a lot less about this for my kids, because they go to outdoor preschool and integrated with nature school. And so they have plenty of time, focusing on gross motor skills, being out climbing and playing, and they have plenty of time on technology. And to me, that's the best of both worlds.
Yeah, I think so too. And it is at those early ages where they need so much more of that. And I think as we get older, we adapt more to that sitting, and at least some of us. I tend not to, but yes, the ability to just be able to do that and not affect us long term, like we've seen some other cases. So in thinking ahead, you've seen more than 1 million students learn on Outschool. What are some stories or trends that give you hope about where education is headed?
When parents and students talk not just about the content, but about the fact that they're amazed that they're joining class with kids from all over the country or all over the world, giving people early access to kids from different cultures and different environments, but who are all coming together around a shared interest, I think is incredibly powerful. And I hope for a generation with kids with that global perspective. And that's something that we can achieve through online education, because it's a perspective that's sorely needed if we're going to address the challenges of the future related to climate and AI. We're going to need kids with a global perspective. So I'm really excited about that. And then, the individual stories. We have parents coming to us say they literally saved their kid's life and have transformed kids from being very sad and depressed into being, enthused with their people, with love of learning, and also succeeding in terms of the educational outcomes. It's amazing to see and a privilege to be part of.
Yeah, that's so exciting. I'm sure it's just got to, make you feel so good about what you're doing. And I know I've spoke with many parents over the years who just love the classes on Outschool. So kudos to you.
It does make me feel good and impatient, because there's so many more kids out there, and
yes,
system for that.
Absolutely. So what encouragement would you give to parents who are just starting to explore online classes for their unique learners?
I would say find what works. Don't be satisfied until you find what works. And you'll know what works by looking in your kids' eyes. Don't accept, that was okay. Look for the real enthusiasm, the spark. And it's one of those things that it when you see it. And one of the great things about online learning is you can experiment. You can try a variety of different classes. You can try different teachers. You can try different learning groups. So take advantage of that flexibility.
Yeah, that's great advice, because yes, we're so used to settling for our kids' education, and with the amount of resources we have out there now, we don't have to settle anymore. And and a lot of it has to do with companies like yours at Outschool that you're pushing the envelope of quality alternative education. So thank you so much for all that you do. Yes. So when people go to your website at outschool.com, what do they find? Just to let our viewers know.
So you can sign up, or you can search for classes. You can search for classes before you sign up, just to check what we have. We have thousands and thousands of classes. So put in some query, or just browse around, see what inspires you. And then if you think you see something that will be a great match for your learner, bring your learner into the conversation. And so it's important to navigate the variety with your kids side by side, as that's how you're going to get the best results.
Absolutely.
And
yes.
Any problems, then contact me at amir@outschool.com, or our support team with links from the website. Or you can try out our AI guide, which is a brand new feature. So you can chat to an AI about what you're looking for, and they'll try and recommend you Outschool classes. So there's a variety of ways to get involved.
That's awesome. Yeah. So we'll have that link hyperlinked in the show notes. So you can just click on outschool.com and it'll take you right there. And so definitely do some searching, do some investigating. I know this is kind of the time of the year that everybody's still wondering, what are we going to use for our curriculum for next year? Or if we're going to homeschool next year, how are we going to do that? So that's one website that I encourage you to go check out. Well, Amir, just thank you so much for joining us and sharing your passion for self-directed, meaningful learning. It's exciting to see how platforms like Outschool are opening new doors for homeschooling families, especially those teaching kids with unique learning needs.
Amazing. It's been a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. And to you, our listeners, if something in today's conversation sparked your interest, I encourage you to head over to outschool.com and see what kinds of classes might align with your child's strengths and passions. There's something really powerful about watching your child light up, and learning really feels like theirs versus yours or somebody else's. And don't forget to visit us at Homeschool Heroes at spedhomeschool.com for more resources, encouragement, and practical support for your homeschooling journey. Until next time, keep on going with your calling, trusting your instincts, and remembering that you're not alone. We're here with you every step of the way. Thanks, everybody, and God bless, and have a great day.
This has been Empowering Homeschool Conversations, provided by SPED Homeschool, a nonprofit that empowers families to home educate diverse learners. To learn more, visit spedhomeschool.com.